I found this sub today and received a formal diagnosis for ASD a year and a half ago. I have questions, so many questions. I've always asked why. People are bothered. I'd like to start out by saying I'm asking this with sincerity and respect for human life. I support and desire everyone to live their authentic life. I have always been this way because I too want to be accepted and loved for who I am. I've been very curious and trying to understand what people think my entire life, because it's clearly not what I'm thinking. Why are people labeling me a TERF for asking the question of what makes a woman, when I too have a hard time answering that? I'm educated, I understand the difference between sex and gender. I understand mental health, and I understand being told you aren't that. If people want to educate and help people understand, why can no one actually answer or talk to me about this? What if my thoughts are valid? What if someone could engage and help me process my questions? I really see people as people. I'm only a woman because I have a uterus and it has made me suffer in specific ways related to that in society. It really hurts to be misunderstood and I want to know. That makes me a TERF? Murder Hornet 212 responds, because it's a very common TERF tactic to just ask questions. They are not just asking questions, and that is their big thing. What makes a woman? They'll say XX chromosomes, large gametes, adult human female, all things that are overly simplistic. That question is a challenge, not a genuine query. I'm hoping that you stepped in it by accident, but basically, you're walking around saying Hail Hitler to people and then being surprised when they think you're a Nazi. I just look at it like this. It's complicated. Sex is complicated enough, which TERFs don't acknowledge, but gender is a thing humans made up that often, but not always, aligns to sex. Humans create categories and try to shove people in boxes. The people don't always actually fit the boxes, and that's not the fault of the people, it's the fault of the boxes. You're going to want to stay away from trying to segregate sex and gender, by the way, because that's another TERF thing. If my brain and soul was telling me I was a woman and society was telling me I was a man, I would be devastated. I think we should believe people when they tell us who they are. I am able to mostly process what being binary trans might feel like, even though I'm cis. I have a difficult time conceptualizing the idea of being non-binary, which was frustrating at first, but then I realized I don't have to understand. I just have to accept and believe people when they tell me who they are. Also, you're not a woman because you've had a uterus. That's simplistic bullshit. My aunts had theirs removed. Are they men now? No, because it's not that simple. Health literacy is the ability to obtain, read, understand, and use healthcare information in order to make appropriate health decisions and follow instructions for treatment. Examples of what happens when an individual has a lack of health literacy includes a woman who sprayed her inhaler on her neck because she had been told to spray it on her throat, a man who did not turn up for cancer tests because he did not know radiology and x-ray department were the same thing, a man with diabetes who decided to stop taking his medicine because he had trouble understanding the instructions, or a woman who thought chemotherapy would not help because it was given into a vein on the other side of her body to where her cancer was. In order to better address this issue, healthcare professionals are encouraged to use simple, direct language and to over-explain instead of under-explain. Not only is this helpful for people who use English as a second language, but it is also imperative to the understanding and health of those with disabilities, which can range from cognitive and developmental disorders to those with difficulty hearing, as well as that of the average patient who just might not understand. After all, most people do not go to the doctor's office armed with medical journals and a thesaurus. And yet, in recent years, healthcare has taken on a distinctly Orwellian slant, often replacing woman with some other perceived synonym which dehumanizes and confuses the average reader.
This is for my people with uteruses and
don't have a uterus, you don't get to make a decision.
Did you just tell me I don't have a uterus?
It will never happen to you. It will never happen to you. Are you telling me that you have a uterus?
Well, you couldn't tell me I don't if I claimed it. My pronouns are uterus owner male.
This is a question for all my fellow uterati out there. And if that term offends you, please just keep scrolling or unfollow me because we're not going to vibe well together, okay?
Broader society as a whole has taken on this newspeak and now punishes those who are unwilling or incapable of speaking it. Just recently, Declan Armstrong, 19, was convicted of using abusive or insulting words to cause harassment. According to Judge Roger Lowe, the public order offense was uplifted to medium level due to its transphobic nature. He was put under nighttime curfew and ordered to pay €590, including €200 compensation to the police community support officer Friel, 25, who was born female but now identifies as male. The words that resulted in these punishments? Is it a boy or is it a girl? The question, however blunt, is not threatening in any way. To ignore police guidelines for dealing with people with autism, which note that speaking honestly to the point of bluntness or rudeness is one sign of autism, and that the way the police approach interact with an autistic individual should change to better address their needs, in favor of coddling a police officer's feelings illustrates the lack of sincerity in the trans rights movement and leftist politics. Despite claims of being supportive of those with disabilities, of minorities, and all the other party lines, and funnily enough, this comes from a population high of people claiming to be neurodivergent, there is a sincere lack of effort to accommodate and support those who are the liberal demographic, but refuse to spout the party lines. If you sincerely cared about the populations whom you love to tokenize and use to guilt people into falling into place, you would take into account the ways that their identities, the identities which have basis in material reality, impact the ways in which they act, and the resources necessary to address their needs.
Is anyone else weirded out by white people who are a little too obsessed with diversity? My friend's moving into a new building, and it's really important for him that it's a diverse building. No black family is about to sign a lease on an apartment, and they're like, wait a minute. How many Panamanians do you have in this building? White people love diversity because they want to feel like they're one of the good, progressive white people. Look at me. I like all the races. I live among them. I want to ignore my neighbors of all races. But there's something weird about wanting an array of ethnicities. Like, it kind of feels like you're ordering for the table. Let me get 2 Mexicans, a Filipino, 3 Nigerians. How are the Colombians? Are they good? They're good? Ooh, Sri Lankans. Cindy recommended those. And also, let me get 100 white people.
Instead, we are seeing the feelings of a small minority placed above that of everyone else, and punishment doled out in turn, despite the so-called minority being primarily comprised of straight white men, the group that liberals like to present as the creators and benefactors of all equal and ignoring all others. In the U.S., Michigan's House of Representatives has passed a hate speech bill making it a criminal offense to misgender an individual. Under the new bill, known as HB 4474, offenders will face up to 5 years in prison or a $10,000 fine if found to be guilty of intimidation by terrorizing, frightening, or threatening someone with the use of wrong gender pronouns. According to the bill, intimidate means a willful course of conduct involving repeated or continuing harassment of another individual that would cause a reasonable individual to feel terrorized, frightened, or threatened, and that actually causes the victim to feel terrorized, frightened, or threatened. One doesn't have to wonder at how this law will be wielded to benefit trans-identified men and to harm any critics who dare go against them. It is of interest how easily laws like these have been passed, not just in the United States, but in the UK and Canada and all around the world, and yet how little recourse there is for verbal violence against women. The difference between the male gaze and the female gaze is the power to enact violence. This is the same division seen in the way that transphobia is treated. Female critics receive rape and death threats, which I've never seen Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh receive. The women who critique trans-identified men, such as Carolyn Farrow, often receive sexist, misogynistic, and sexually violent threats. And yet, none of these were taken into account or even prosecuted, while she was arrested for calling a spade a spade.
So Jeffrey Marsh had the chance to calm things down with his fan base when this video went viral.
So I just got an email, pretty much a threat, saying they know where I live. And what scares me the most is they have got my daughter's details on the email, and it's not a coincidence because both of my daughters, they go to 2 different schools.
But this was Jeffrey's response.
Thank you. Thank you for being a trans ally. Thank you for your big heart. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support.
I want you to spot the difference.
Those of you who are threatening other content creators because you are wanting to support me, don't. Stop it. I don't want you to do that.
It's kind of hard to preach love and inclusivity in support of Jeffrey Marsh when you are cheering on other people threatening a woman and her children and making comments like, well, now she knows her place. Just some food for thought.
Just like no one seems to care about the impact of newspeak on healthcare outcomes, to the extent of refusing care to gravely ill women, no one seems to really care about the impact of laws like these on the minorities that liberals claim to represent and care about. And often those who they choose to LARP as an attempt to feel more oppressed than they truly are. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I was thinking about this in context of like the way these laws have been passed so easily, and the ways that like as women we get told so many disgusting, gross things in so many formats, especially online. But you've yet to see there be any laws against, for example, calling women cunts, bitches, and whores, or saying they want to rape you violently. There's no laws against that. No one's being prosecuted for that, which, mind you, a lot of those people who make these threats, there's actual reason to think they might follow through on them. In the case of Carolyn Farrow, she was doxxed, she had her kids threatened. That's far more of an actual threat than someone saying, hey, you're a man, to someone who is a man. And in the context of one of my earlier videos this month, I don't know when I'm putting this out, but the one about chess, the first one, people were mentioning about how, the fact that women are harassed in chess or in video games, that shouldn't be too much of an issue. I remember playing Overwatch, and that was when I first got my first apartment, so I was literally like 19, living by myself, playing Overwatch. I got into this group, this guy found my IP address, figured out where I was living, and then went on to discuss how he raped me the night before. He went through all this detail, just basically going through this fantasy of his. And you know what? Yeah, I can go ahead and report him, and nothing happened, because nothing ever happens. When a woman is threatened, verbally, sexually, whatever, nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens when half the time when women are actually killed, murdered, raped, whatever. Half the time, nothing happens, even when something does happen to the woman. And so to see laws passed in which, oh, you hurt my feelings, is enough of a threat for you to have someone in trouble. And in this case, an autistic individual who is pretty well known that one of the symptoms of autism is basically being very blunt, being very straightforward. Like, that's something that's pretty commonly well known, and which is literally included in the police training that the person in question would have had to gone through. And then you see these laws passed, like in Illinois, which are threatening huge fines. That's especially insidious, considering that people on disability do not have that much money. They don't have $10,000 lying around. Having part of their very limited income, if they're on disability, put towards paying someone because their feelings got hurt, that's awful and horrible and completely immoral, and I'm unfortunately not at all surprised to see that this is where we're going. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.